Elecard CodecWorks is a professional modular solution for real-time transcoding, encoding, multiplexing and demultiplexing of video. CodecWorks is a software product that allows encoding video into different formats, profiles, and for various content delivery protocols. To ensure continuous and robust broadcasting, it is very important to properly configure the streaming video source and the encoding server redundancy. In this video, we show how to do it. To make the CodecWorks transcoding system reliable, we have included the possibility of both the video source and the server redundancy in N+1 and N+M modes. Let us take a look at the source redundancy first. When the signal on the main source is lost, the schema automatically switches to the redundant source. The schema starts using the main source again as soon as the streaming is restored. When creating a new encoding schema, set the main streaming source. In the source drop-down list, select IP source. In the type list, select IP DMUX. This source is to be used for transcoding by default. Add another source to set up the redundant source. In the drop-down list source, select IP source, and in the type list, choose IP reserve. Note that the number of redundant sources is not limited. To complete the schema creation, go through the following steps. On the Input tab, select the elementary streams and the required action for the stream. You can select elementary streams from either the redundant or primary source. On the Output tab, specify the output broadcast protocol for the stream. Go to the Output Settings tab and specify the output multicast address. Right-click the console and select Start in the context menu. In the Program Manager, you can make sure that two sources are used for transcoding. The schema shows in real time which source is currently being used, the primary or the redundant one. CodecWorks offers two approaches to the redundant source operation. According to the first approach, one source is always considered the main one and has priority in operation. In this case, when a problem occurs on the main source, the system switches to the redundant one, and when the main stream recovers, the system switches back. To enable this redundancy scenario, click the Switch Back to Primary Source checkbox in the server settings. In the second scenario, the sources are considered equal in priority. Switching between sources occurs only in case of problems with the current stream, and the system does not return to the initial sources after it is restored. To enable this redundancy scenario, clear the Switch Back to Primary Source checkbox in the server settings. Let's check how the video sources are switched. In our example, when creating the schema, we specified the stream received from console 1 as the main one. We can see that when console 1 is operating, the schema uses the main source. It is also possible to view all the encoding statistics for the stream. Now, we switch off encoder console 1. As soon as the schema detects that the signal on the main source is lost, it switches to the reserve 1 source. If the schema is configured according to the first scenario, it switches back to the primary source when console 1 is switched on. If the sources are set up as equal in priority, the schema does not change the source when switching on console 1. Now let's take a look at the N+1 server redundancy. In this mode, one of the server is used exclusively as a redundant server and starts its operation once the connection to the primary server is lost. Before configuring, make sure that all servers are located in a single subnet. In the Manager, select the server to be used as redundant and open the Redundancy tab. Add servers that require redundancy on the left panel. The redundant server completely copies the configuration of the added server to fully replace it in operation in case it fails. After the configuration is completed, the consoles configured for server redundancy are disabled and marked as redundancy. To check how the redundancy is set up, let's switch off one of the primary servers. The schema goes to the enabled state and starts working. When the primary server is switched on, it receives the command that the redundant server is working and the console does not need to be turned on. The N+M redundancy is configured in the same way as the N+1 redundancy, but the redundant servers are combined into a group with managed server switching. The group must be configured on a redundant server by adding a list of all redundant servers. After that, the settings will be automatically sent to all servers in the group. When the primary server is restored, it receives a command to stop the consoles. The started redundant server becomes the primary one, informs the rest of the servers in the group about it, and the servers start reserving it. We understand that sometimes you may need help. Elecard has a support team as well as a business team that can help structure a solution for you. We can help address all your video monitoring and analysis needs for projects of any scale and complexity.